I'm Jennifer Della Quadri, and this is the Raising Happy Teens podcast, where you learn how to successfully guide your teenager into adulthood without losing your sanity in the process. Let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Coach Suzanne Hanna to discuss anxiety, alcohol, and teen girls. Suzanne talks about her decision to stop drinking and how she made it her mission to help girls feel heard, more comfortable in their own skin, and more equipped to handle life's curveballs. Suzanne and I agree that girls deserve to be heard and supported. And speaking of being heard and supported, I just created a brand new exclusive podcast episode for you moms called Speak Up with Confidence. Whether it's asking your teen to help out around the house, negotiating a raise at work, or setting a boundary with family, this episode is packed with practical tips to help you speak up confidently, clearly, and with compassion. And also included is a guided meditation to help you feel more grounded and confident when you speak. It's totally free. Click on the link in the episode description to access today. Now, on to the show. To have you here. We were just talking about some things we have in common before we hit record. And I thought, let's go ahead and dive in because we've got a lot of things we want to cover. So let me just begin by having you tell my audience a little bit about yourself and your background.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Suzanne Hanna. I'm a lifelong educator. I spent 25 years in education. 90% of that time was in public education. And I began as an English teacher, a high school English teacher. And I moved from that position up really quickly to a position at a central office where I was actually a program director for English language arts for all the middle and high schools in the district, and it was a district with 70 plus schools. So it was a big job. I'm still not quite sure how I got it, but I did. And I did that. And then after that, I moved into administration in schools. So I became an assistant principal at a middle school and then moved to a big high school and then another big high school. And my last year in education was as an assistant principal at a middle school, which is always an interesting experience.
Oh, yes.
And and I am a mother of two kids. I have two teenagers. My son's in college and my daughter's 13. And I've been married for 24 years. We live on a farm in North Carolina in the foothills. And our house was built in 1770. So it's quite historic. It's on the National Historic Register. And we've got chickens and lots of gardens and two Australian shepherds. So just normal, fun family. Very lucky and blessed in that regard for sure. And right now, I'm excited because I opened a new business where I am a life coach for college and teen girls. And so I have taken my experience in public education and blended it with certification in affective liminal psychology. So I help girls work through anxiety with their mindset, just giving them a safe space because we all know that teens thrive when they have strong relationships with trusted adults. So that's what I offer for the girls. And I love the coaching job. It's my calling. I love teenagers. It's always just been, I'm a magnet for teenagers. I connect with them. I think they're the most discerning and interesting and emotionally available people that I know. And I love their honesty and I love how they can sniff out a fake in any room. They're like little hound dogs. Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons, or those many of the reasons why I wanted to have you on this podcast, because you and I have so much in common with our background in education and
Hmm.
our passion for helping teenagers. Of course, you
Yes.
directly help the teenagers, and I've done that, and I still do that in the current, but I really also focus on the parents. And so
Yes.
I definitely wanted to bring you on because you have a scope of experience that I don't, and that's working in middle school and high school. So I
Mhm.
have a background in education, of course, and I have teens myself, but you're coming from the perspective of working in public education with this
Mhm.
demographic. So I knew you would have a lot of really great things to add and offer to my audience. So thank you so much for coming on. And
Yes, thank
also,
you.
I wonder if I'm sure there are people listening who have never heard of, and you're gonna have to remind me, liminal psychology. What was that?
Yes, it's an it's effective liminal psychology.
Okay.
And so effective, like the normal word effective, and liminal is a word that seems to have come around in our space um, more now than I've ever heard it. It means like when you're in betwixt and between. So it's the space where change tends to happen. It's when, when you're between two big spaces. That's when you're the most ripe for change and for understanding really who you are. And so the psychology behind it is that it's really the study of human behavior and the science of self. And
Right.
so it's helping people understand how they feel and that emotions drive behavior. So
Mhm.
I really loved this because in my experience, I had so many girls suffering in my office and so many girls suffering in classrooms that I've visited and in the hallways and in the cafeteria. And I mean, Jennifer, I would say 90% of the like health emergency calls I would get to classrooms would be girls having panic attacks. And
Yeah.
I would sit on the floor with so many girls, walk around the school with them, help calm them down. And it killed my soul to see these kids suffering. And girls would be in my office just crumbling under pressure, and pressure not only from the school, but from their parents and from society and from the media, and their phones were diminishing all of their self-confidence, and the pressure they were putting on themselves was breaking my heart. And I kept telling my colleagues, like I remember talking to the social workers and the counselors and just saying, guys, we're not doing enough for these girls, they're suffering. And I would have all these precious parents in my office just with boxes of tissue, frustrated, doing all the right things, just good people doing all the right things, but just unable to connect with their kid or unable to understand, why she was suffering so deeply with such debilitating anxiety. And parents just needed help. And as I said, I'd talk to my colleagues and I'm like, guys, we are not serving these kids. And I felt this I guess my knowing just knew something was coming. And then when I learned about effective liminal psychology, I thought this can give me the certification that I need to be able to work with kids one on one and to be
Yeah.
able to have my own business and coach girls one on one and to
Yeah.
help them understand that their behavior is driven by their emotions
Yeah.
and that we can learn so much about our emotions, just through something as simple as naming our emotions. And that through neuroplasticity and through mindset shifts, we really have control of how we feel and how we behave. And at 48, I know that. I wish I'd known it when I was 15, right? And so that's why I think it's wonderful to work with girls and help them realize that the power that they have, and to teach them, help them learn self-compassion and to
Yeah.
understand that how they feel is perfectly normal, and that's just their brain responding in a way that brains respond. And so
Yeah.
I think, yeah, yeah,
Normalizing it is a big part of it.
yes,
That there's nothing wrong with you, and normalizing it and then
right,
understanding it and then having a plan for how to address it so that it's not
yes,
taking your peace and impacting your quality
right.
of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
Yeah, and just out
absolutely.
of curiosity, when you were in the educational setting,
Mhm,
you mentioned that it was mostly girls. Why do
mhm.
you think that is?
Um, I've really thought about that, having a teenage son. And I think girls, like I was saying earlier, teenagers in particular have a discernment that others don't, but especially teenage girls. And
Mm,
they have this level of, I don't know if it's like where they are developmentally, but they're emotionally charged. And
yeah,
so I think that emotional charge is somehow like explicitly I guess abused by social media. It's
uh,
like it's almost like it preys on this it preys on where they are developmentally, if that makes any
mhm,
sense. I just feel like they're just um and I feel like it's created to do that. So that makes me really angry. But I feel like that the girls are feeling the comparison, and they're feeling the constant judgment of themselves against others and against a sense of perfectionism. And we know that perfectionism is not possible. Being perfect is not possible. And I've worked with girls in discussing, but then the difference between like perfectionism and excellence. And
Yeah.
like, let's talk, yeah, and excellence is so different. Like, let's define how you see excellence.
Yeah.
And because that's a verb, and perfectionism's like this pie in the sky thing. So
Right.
I think I think that's why girls are specifically more affected by it. I think their emotionality, is that a word? Emotionality? I think I may have made that up, but
It
we'll
makes
see.
sense to me.
It
So,
worked. It
yeah,
worked. There
let's
you
make
go.
so you're helping them develop coping strategies. And
Mhm.
this is kind of where I'd like to go with this conversation is
Okay.
there are healthy coping strategies and there are coping strategies we use that are actually life detracting. So
Yes.
before we get into the unhealthy coping strategies,
Mhm.
would you just share with us a little bit about what you found to be helpful for these girls who are feeling anxious in managing that anxiety?
Sure. I feel like girls really appreciate knowing the science behind anxiety. And so I have like this real simple model where like I hold up my hand
Mhm.
and your brainstem's here and your limbic system and your frontal lobe. And I explain to girls, when your bodies respond as they would have back when we were cave women to a saber-toothed tiger, our bodies produce the chemicals, the fight or flight, and our brains literally go offline. We flip our lid. And so the part of your brain that thinks about thinking is not thinking about thinking.
Yeah.
And the parts of your brain that make you feel anxiety, like your heart racing, feeling short of breath, your hands feeling tingly. There's a science behind why your body responds that way and why your nervous system does. And to learn how to hack that with something as simple as breathing techniques with like box breathing, or I think breathing techniques. Girls are always like, "Really, Suzanne?" I'm like, "No, really, they
Yes.
really work." And so I have to like prove it to them. We have to practice and
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I love teenage girls because they're so skeptical. They're like,
Uh-huh.
"Really?"
Sure.
And so and so when you can hack your nervous system and calm yourself down, your brain goes back online, and your brain's like this happy little brain again. And so working through the science helps them become more curious about their future reactions. And so I like to give girls, I call it not homework because it's not homework, but it is an assignment to become more curious about when you feel your anxiety rise, where does it land in your body?
Mhm.
And I explained to them, like, mine lands in my throat. It's so weird. It's like I've been yelling at like a concert or a game, like
Yeah.
some big contentious game. I've been screaming for 3 hours. It's the
Yeah.
strangest feeling. And so they are to pay attention to where it lands. And then wherever that lands is like your body's signal to you. And
Mhm.
so my goal is for girls to feel more in touch with their bodies, because our bodies are our natural alarm systems, and we can calm ourselves down through breathing. We can tell our nervous systems it's okay. And our brain can get back online where we can think more logically and we cannot have such erratic responses. Because I
Yeah.
know girls get really frustrated with their erratic responses. Living with teenagers myself, it's hard as a parent when they have erratic responses. And as a parent, we're from the moment we get pregnant with our kids, we're carrying these humans, we keep them alive, we love them, we protect them, and then all of a sudden they want to be individuals and they individuate and push themselves away and they become independent, and then they start yelling at us, and
Yeah.
it's just this whole weird situation. And it's hard as a parent to not meet your daughter's emotional state.
Yes.
And so, and I think, and girls, when they become aware of that heightened emotional state, they realize that they have the option, they have the responsibility, which is not a scary word. It's their ability to respond. You have the ability to respond to this by calming yourself down and taking control of yourself. You can do this. You have this power. And I think that's like the number one thing I want girls to understand, is that you do have the power within yourself to calm yourself and to get your
Yes.
brain working again.
Yeah. And basically, what I'm hearing from you is it's educating. So, understanding what's going on,
Mhm.
awareness of how it lands for you specifically, and then
Yeah.
strategizing on how to proactively care for yourself so that it doesn't sweep you away in those moments.
Yes, absolutely. And the awareness is the key, and
Mhm.
naming the emotion and understanding it and accepting it and saying, "Hey,
Mhm.
anxiety, there you are." You're not the
Yes,
beast I thought you were. You are my body actually trying to take care of itself. Because if I were still a cave woman, this response would help me get away from the saber-toothed tiger. So I mean,
exactly.
evolutionarily, it's worked for us, right? And so I feel like our brain and your
Yeah.
brain's trying to help you. And so when you say, "All right, girl, I hear you, I see you. I'm going to calm you
Mhm.
down, and we're going to figure this out together." So it's almost like teaching the girls the parts of themselves that work together, and you can love your anxiety. I know it sounds crazy at first, but you can embrace it. And I think girls that have heightened anxiety are our sensitive girls, and our
Yeah.
sensitive girls are the ones that change the world. They're
Yeah.
the ones that can they're empaths. They love hard, and they're loyal, and they're brilliant, and they're the ones that, to me, they're what we've been waiting for.
Yes.
And yeah.
You and I completely agree on that, and we're on the same page with that. And really, the point is to be able to foster and hone in that special gift that they have so that
Yes.
the challenging parts of it don't undermine their ability to function effectively and do what they want to do ultimately in this
Right.
world and in their life. And I love how you're explaining how all of this is really just creating a space for them to
Mhm.
be honest with it and not fight against it, because
Yes.
that can essentially that can cause even more levels of anxiety and stress and tension and make it even worse. Whereas we put our arm around it and walk alongside it and say, "Hey, this is a part of me. I see you there, and I'm
Yeah.
also going to care for you through this, and we're partners.
Right. We live together.
We're roomies. You're my roomie that
Right.
I didn't ask for.
That's
You're here
right.
nonetheless." Yeah. So, absolutely fantastic. And so, another one of the things, the reasons why I wanted to bring you on this podcast, it revolves around finding coping mechanisms that aren't exactly healthy. One
Mhm.
of which is alcohol.
Yes.
And I know personally, from my perspective, alcohol is something that I have turned to in the past when I've been feeling anxious
Mhm.
to like quell the anxiety. And
Yeah.
fortunately, I'm not really at the place where I'm doing that anymore. And I know, especially for the younger generation, as they're still learning about themselves, and especially at that age, high school. And I know you work mostly with college students, but that same
Mm.
adolescent, I'm still figuring out who I am stage, it can be really tempting to
Yes.
just, hey, you know what? I'm feeling anxious. I'm going to go to this party and I'm going to drink alcohol and to
Right.
excess. And we've connected on your history of becoming
Mhm.
sober, and
Uh-huh.
that's another part of the layer of it that I wanted to bring on. So, if we could just shift a little bit into the context of alcohol use, and
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your experience with it, and then we can talk a little bit about how that could apply to parents and also teenagers.
Oh, yes, certainly. I love to talk about it. I feel like that, because I bring my presence is no shame and no judgment when it comes to conversations around alcohol and any substance use. I think that that's part of the reason kids suffer is because of the shame that's connected with it, and the reason why they don't communicate with their parents and other adults, and they don't seek help when they need it, because we have a culture that shames people, and it's unfortunate. But so I have chosen to stop drinking. I have been alcohol free for over 2 years now, and it's been wonderful. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made for myself as an adult. And I am not an alcoholic. I've never had a DUI. I've never lost a job. I've never had a relationship end or have issues because of alcohol. So, when you tell people you stop drinking, they automatically assume that, they picture like somebody on the street corner with a paper bag, which is so sad. Because
Yeah,
number one, the person on the street corner with a paper bag doesn't want to be there either, right? Like, where is our compassion? But
yeah,
also, there's an automatic shame response to it. And so, I grew up with a normal family. I was an only child to two good time, fun parents. My parents were always the first people on the dance floor. Super fun. My mom loved wine or still loves wine. My dad drinks beer. Like, that's just their culture. Drinking was just something that was fun. And so, I went um, I never have thrown up from drinking in my whole like life. It's so interesting. And so I went to college and had fun. I was in college in the 90s where it was just like everybody drank and had fun. And then where I went to graduate school was another fun, school where, big football team and tailgating and just, just fun. And so when I was a young teacher. I had a group of teachers that we would go out with after, the Friday night football games, or maybe like after a Thursday or whatever, and we'd go to a bar and have a few drinks and just nothing. I didn't question it, just kept living. High achieving person, always, had to, I'm always one of those people that had to get straight A's, right? And so I fought the perfectionism. And so I realized moving into like my 20s and 30s when I had no issue with it, but I was recognizing that I had anxiety and because I'm so driven and I was very anxious. And so moving into like my later 30s, I believe a lot of there was a confluence of a lot of things. And I think one of those is working with perimenopause and hormone changes. And, being a high school assistant principal with two children, renovating, an 18th century farmhouse, and I mean, running 10Ks. Like, what else am I supposed to do? Right. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going to can tomatoes this weekend. Like, I was doing too much. And so alcohol was my friend. And
Mhm.
so when I had a hard day at school, with everything that would happen. I mean, it's crazy how just one day in the life of an assistant principal can be. Like that's a whole other podcast we'll have to have. I can tell you so many
Can
stories.
only
And so,
imagine.
and so I would come home and I would need to like come down from that experience from having
Mhm.
been under, from things like being under fluorescent lights all day and, with 2,200 humans and teenagers, no doubt. And
Yeah.
so wine was the thing. I would come in the house with my kids, get them started with homework, start dinner, and I would pour a glass of wine. And it
Yeah.
was just what I thought was self care. And
Yeah.
so, and I didn't know until I started reading and paying attention. I remember reading somewhere that your liver needs a break that you should take. People that drink should have at least three consecutive non-drinking days a week in order for your liver to rebound from drinking. And I was like, okay, cool, that's easy. I mean, I had two kids and breastfed two kids and I didn't drink. Like I can do this.
Yeah.
But let me tell you that the first day, I don't know if it was the first day, but in my memory of this is when I told myself I couldn't drink, I was
Mhm.
so mad. I felt deprived. And I was like, wait a minute, I do everything else right. Why can't I have a glass of Chardonnay? Like, that is my reward. That is how I calm myself. That's going to help me sleep. It's going to help me feel better. The whole mommy wine culture runs rampant, right? Like, that's a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was suffering from what I know now as cognitive dissonance,
Uh-huh.
where my conscious brain knew that alcohol was I probably shouldn't be drinking, but
Mhm.
my unconscious brain was like, "Screw it, Suzanne. Like you've had a hard day and you do everything right and who cares? It's
Yeah.
Chardonnay. Who cares?" And so I had this battle going on in my head. And so I didn't have I got frustrated with alcohol. My relationship with it started to like deteriorate because I was thinking about it all the time. And I
Yeah.
was like, why am I thinking about alcohol when I don't necessarily have a drinking problem? And so an anxious brain like mine went into like this spiral with that. And so I came across in 2018 Annie Grace's The Alcohol Experiment.
Mhm.
And I was really interested, intrigued by it because the first part of it is nothing's wrong with you,
Yeah.
and take a 30-day break. And so it was like a 30-day break, and I was like, you know what, I want to do this because it was like September, the end of summer, where I had had a month off and I'd had fun, vacation, and just overindulging on food and wine. It's like at the end of summer, I wanted like grilled chicken salads and water. Like I felt gross at the end of every summer, and so I was like, okay, 30-day break, and so I loved it. I didn't drink for 30 days, and every day, with it, there was an app at that point. It was like one of her first iterations of this. And every day you break up or you break down an unconscious belief you have about alcohol to include alcohol tastes good. Alcohol helps me sleep.
Mhm.
Alcohol makes me more social. Um, you know, alcohol calms my anxiety. All of these things, and you learn the science behind it. And so, what happens is it slowly changes your unconscious beliefs about it. And so, during this time, my anxiety plummeted. I slept like a baby.
Oh.
it was crazy. I was like, "What is this?" I had so much energy, I annoyed myself. I was like, "What is this?" And and it was like my brain went back online. Because I was suffering from some brain fog, and I've always been very quick on my feet, and I did not like that my brain wasn't working. That was really frustrating for me. And so, I loved it, and so at the end of it, I was like, "Wait a minute, like, this goes against, all, like, 30 some years of my life when this was supposed to be a fun thing." And so I actually, moderated for a while after that because I was
Okay.
just kinda over it, and I was like, "Ugh, I don't feel like it," and I had, gotten out of the habit, but then the holidays hit and, you start drinking again with family and blah, 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 and so, um but I knew a fire was lit inside, and I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna not drink one day. And I remember I was like quizzing my family. I was like, "So, if I stop drinking, are you still gonna like me?" And they're like, "Of
Yeah.
course we are, but why would you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but there's something inside of me." And so all the thought leaders that I love, like Brene Brown,
Mhm.
Glennon Doyle, like the women that I revere and read are all non-drinkers. And I
Yeah.
started to think, there's something to this, right?
Mhm.
And so then, during the pandemic, I decided to take another break. So I
Okay.
went like 70 some days without drinking during COVID, right?
Which
Which
is
was,
huge.
I mean, what is that, right? Like, yeah. And so I felt great. And so something in me was like, you're going to stop. You're going to
Yeah.
stop one day. And so I had like this slow goodbye because it was like a lifestyle I had to let go of. And so
Yeah.
I had this amazing morning. I went on this vacation with my husband on our anniversary trip, and we were on Isle of Palms in South Carolina, a beautiful place. And
Mhm.
I had such anxiety that weekend. Like it was like this burning just panic inside of me. And I had no reason to be anxious. I was with my favorite person on the planet. My
Mhm.
kids were safe at my house with my dogs and my in laws. Everything was fine. I was dying inside. Went out on the beach one morning, couldn't sleep, left my husband because I was like, just sleep because I'm rolling around like a crazy person. So I went on the beach and I was walking and I was like, what is wrong with me? I am an anxious mess. And I don't know, Jennifer, it was the most beautiful moment of my life. And the sun was coming up, and I had this peace just land on me. And I thought, Suzanne, you never let anybody else down in your whole life. You don't let your husband down. You don't let your kids down. You don't let your students down, the teachers. Like you work, work, work. Why do you keep letting yourself down? And I was like, I'm not anymore. I've got my own back. And that was it. And that was over 2 years ago, and so it's been like the strangest journey, but most beautiful journey of my life, and so I've learned how to actually coach people through stopping drinking alcohol through this whole process. I'm a certified This Naked Mind coach, which is, who knew? Yeah.
That's incredible. And it all really starts with curiosity around things and awareness. Just
Yes.
like what you're teaching your clients that you work with on anxiety, it works the same way with everything. Is
Yes.
having this open-minded awareness of an evaluation, self-evaluation is how is this
Mm.
impacting my life? Is this what I want to continue doing? And
Yes.
the thing too that you brought up is that discomfort that came with the change initially.
Yes.
Even though it was something you were doing on purpose and you wanted, there was like alarms going off. Like, and same thing with the high achieving, perfectionistic,
Mhm.
very motivated, the one who does it, especially women who are the nurturers and do it all, take
Yes.
care of the house and the kids and everything. I
Right.
deserve this glass of wine. I worked hard
Mhm.
and I need this break. And
Yes.
then even if you're consciously deciding, this is not serving me, I'm just gonna, give it a break, you still have that voice in your head. Well, gosh, well,
Right.
what the heck do I get if I don't get this? Like, I deserve something,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And to be able to experience and witness that discomfort with curiosity and compassion
Mhm.
and continue forward, even though you know that discomfort is there and it's pushing against, right? The
Yes.
willingness or the desire to change. Is that
Right, and I think I had to, come to terms with that part of me that she thought the drinker in me thought she was taking care of me. She
yeah,
thought that part of me was like, Suzanne, you have worked hard. This is your boundary. This is you come home so now you can be a mom and
yeah,
not be an assistant principal.
yeah.
Now you can relax. It's like now you can go on vacation. You're on vacation now. It's not vacation until you pour your first drink, right? And so, yeah, it was like this part of me was what she was protecting me and doing what she knew that she thought was best for me. And
Yeah.
so, and I think a lot of people when they first like stop drinking, they'll name the the craving or the drinker. Like they'll name her like the wine witch or like because you name that other part. And so I never liked that because I didn't think it was a bad thing. Like I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Even as like an educated person, I didn't know. So it's very interesting how that works. But so accepting that girl inside of me was trying to calm my anxiety and learning that alcohol makes your body create crazy levels of cortisol, which
Mhm.
is the stress hormone. And so, but that doesn't happen until hours after you've consumed the alcohol. So
Mhm.
alcohol is a depressant, but
Mhm.
your brain's always searching for homeostasis. Like your brain wants to be balanced. And
Mhm.
alcohol is the depressant. Well, it's a depressant and a stimulant. It's all the way around. It's not a good thing, but your brain responds and produces like dynorphin, which is this chemical. It's like actually a peptide that has reactions in your body. And then cortisol is produced later. So that's why, like, if you wake up at 3 in the morning after drinking, you have to go to the bathroom and then your mind just is in overdrive. And it's
Yeah.
because your body is responding to the depressant with the stimulant just
Right.
for that because it wants the balance. And so the next day anxiety is real. Like a
Yeah.
hangover with anxiety is a real
Yep.
thing. And I never had like debilitating hangovers because I didn't drink enough for that. So I had when I did drink, I'd have like micro hangovers, right?
Yeah.
So it was like this little it was just enough where I was tired and
Mhm.
where and it would just amp my anxiety up just a little bit, but I didn't understand that it was the alcohol that was causing that. And
Yeah.
so, like you said, the curiosity around it, the awareness and the and approaching it with no shame.
Mhm.
And yeah.
That's really what it is and this is how my listeners, if they're listening and they're nodding their head, yeah, I totally relate to all of this. And of course, this is a podcast for parents of teenagers, but the thread does interweave between
Yes.
parental behavior and teen behavior. So if
Mhm.
teenagers are raised in a family where drinking is normalized, and again, there's no judgment. I'm not saying that drinking is
Right.
bad. You can't drink. If you drink, you're bad. But what I'm saying is that to be aware of if you are drinking, the impact it's having on you, and then
Mhm.
also the impact it's having on your kids. So to
Right.
speak to that with the clients you work with, does this come up? Alcohol use? I can imagine it does, especially in college. And tell me a little bit more about how the conversations around that go with the teen girls that you work with.
Yes, it does come up. And with college drinking, it's binge drinking.
Yeah.
And it's not, they're not sitting around at a wine bar having a glass of Chardonnay. I mean, they're carrying those stupid Borg things,
Oh my
and I can't with that. I tell them I'm like I'm embarrassed to even say that word. I'm not
I
saying it.
know, and
We're
I'm
s-
so
we're
proud,
still
like,
talking
you're
about it,
so proud, but I'm, like, impressed that you know it, but of course I know it too.
and they decorate them. What is
They do.
happening?
Yeah.
What is this?
It's
I need
hydrating.
this to stop. I need this to stop. I can't. And
I
so
hear
I can't. And so binge drinking is so damaging. And it's damaging because first of all, you are ingesting a neurotoxin, which is taking away your ability to make good decisions and it's taking away your inhibitions. And so girls put themselves in these situations where sometimes they'll wake up places where they didn't remember going to sleep. And or the next morning they will have forgotten a several hour period. And these blackouts are harmful and on many levels,
yeah.
but not knowing what you're doing is a big deal.
Yeah.
And also having girls understand that their brains are still forming through the
Mm.
age of like 22, 23. And
Yeah.
so when you introduce, ethanol, because that's what alcohol is, like we just
Mhm.
add sugar and things to make it taste good, but it's ethanol and it's a neurotoxin and it's a carcinogen. It's all the bad things, right? But it's
Yeah.
sold to us as something that is good and it's what people do and the pressure is there. But it goes back to what you so sagely said a little while ago. It's about curiosity. And it's about being curious about when you drink, how you felt when you drank. Like I don't tell the girls to stop. I'm like, you do you, honey. Like, and I don't tell anybody to stop drinking. Like, it's your life. You do what you want. And I just because I haven't had alcohol in 2 years doesn't mean like 2 years down the road, if I'm in Italy, I'm not gonna have a glass of wine, right? Like, I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even. I just wanted to be free of thinking about it, and so I don't think about it, and that's what I like. But so I tell the girls, be curious. Like before you drink, think about how you feel. After your first one, how are you feeling? After your second, however many, pay
Yeah.
attention to the people around you, how they're acting. And then the next day, I want to talk to you about how you feel. And do you have regret? How does your body feel physically? How is this affecting your studies? Because, kids are going to class super hungover or not
Yeah.
going at all. And
Mhm.
they're just like, they're cognitively not there because their brains are, processing this chemical, or
Yeah.
this, and it's so it begins with curiosity. And as with all things with teenagers, they gotta think it's their idea, right? They have to
Yep.
come to the conclusion on their own. And
Right.
so I'm more of like a guide.
Uh-huh.
And here's some information. Think about this. What do you
Yeah.
think about this?
Mhm.
And I like to, break down the unconscious beliefs.
Mhm.
Um, for instance, like alcohol tastes good, right?
Yeah.
Like we go back to, the first time you tried it, how did it taste? They're like, oh,
Yeah.
Susanna, it was nasty. Ugh," and I'm
Yep.
like, well, I remember the first time I like sipped my dad's Coors Light and I was like, oh my God, it's like
What
vinegar.
is this?
And it's so gross, right? So we talk about the taste. And then I tell them about my great uncle Max, who said that if we drank for the taste, we'd all be drinking chocolate milkshakes.
That's a
And
good point.
so, yeah, and so we just kind of, unpack the unconscious beliefs, and
Yeah.
it's a slow process, but like I said before, the girls have such discernment, and they want to
Mhm.
be healthy, and I have found too that this generation is a lot more health conscious, and they are a lot more conscious of the negative effects of alcohol. And I have
Mhm.
girls reach out to me that say, Suzanne, I don't drink, and thank you for talking about how it's
Mhm.
okay, and thank you for celebrating that there you can have as much fun or a lot more fun by not
Yeah.
drinking. And
Yeah.
so I'm really proud of this generation,
Yeah.
um, because I
I
don't even remember people in college who didn't drink. I mean,
If
that's so
they
sad
were
about it.
there, I didn't hang out with them.
I didn't It's so bad. I bet they were there having fun.
I mean, yeah. So I all of these strategies that you're using with your
Mhm.
clients, these are direct strategies that I am nodding my head in agreement parents can use with their teen. Because like
Yes.
you said, it needs to be the teenager's idea to
Yes.
not do it. Whereas if you say you can't drink, if you do this, you're going to be in big trouble. Teenagers are gonna do what they're gonna do, and if
Yes.
they know that they're gonna get in trouble, they're just gonna lie and hide.
They
You
are.
don't want that. And so to be able to take the coach approach, TM, I just created this,
Yeah.
and let them know, "Hey, listen, you're gonna make these decisions,
Mhm.
but being able to walk them through the awareness. Some teenagers may be willing to do that with their parents, some may not, which is why it's
Right.
so great to have an outsider, a trusted adult that they could
Yes.
process these things with. It's so incredibly amazing. And to be able to do that with something that has such strong assumptions associated with it and judgments like
Mhm.
alcohol and going to a party. And if you're not drinking, then what does that mean about you and the discomfort? And being able to plan in advance and talk about how to handle the discomfort of being the only person at the
Yes.
party who's not drinking, how to handle what people ask you, why you're not drinking. And this
Yes.
applies to adults and the teens, you know?
Yes.
And
This crosses the lines. Yeah.
it
This is
really
all the
does.
humans. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and just like what you said when you were talking about how you made the decision to stop drinking, then you became somebody to help walk people through that as well.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing you're doing with the girls that you work with. To be able to support someone through something, you need to know and be able to empathize and understand and potentially have gone
Mhm.
through it yourself. And so,
Right.
whether parents have done that or not, it all really does come down to the empathy, the understanding, the curiosity, and that's where the connection is with all of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Certainly. And you can't willpower doesn't work. Willpower can work, but it runs out. And our behavior is driven by our emotions. And
Yeah.
so, positive behavior change is possible when you change your emotions behind it. And
Mm.
so that works, like I was saying, for all the humans, for the
Yep.
teenagers and their parents. And
Yeah.
so, and I think healthy conversations about alcohol are essential.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for me to have conversations with people when they're like, oh, my house is the place where kids can drink because at least I know they're safe. And they'll ask me what I think about that. And I'm like, well, do you want to know the truth? Because, I mean, because kids, you are you trying to be cool?
Yeah.
because the kids are only at your house because that's where they know they can drink,
Yeah.
right? And they're
Mhm.
gonna they're gonna laugh and be nicer to you because you're letting them do what they want to do.
Mhm.
And that's just that's in my opinion, that's not healthy for the kids.
Yeah.
And it's illegal
Yep.
and it's dangerous. And
Yeah.
so, but then also the other side is, some parents are like, well, Suzanne, I know my daughter's drinking and she lies and goes and finds ways to do it.
Yeah.
And like you said, that's what kids do. That's what teenagers
Yeah.
do. And that's why they're such frustrating little creatures, right? And
Yeah.
that's why parents call us because and that's why we because it having, like you said, the neutral third party
Yeah.
that can be honest and say,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not our conversation is not something I'm going to talk to your parents about. Like, this is between
Mhm.
us. But this is
Mhm.
what you need to know, sweet girl. Like, this is the truth. And it's up to you. And girls especially love to feel empowered and love to feel that they own their decisions. And
Yep.
they do. And
Mhm.
and as a parent, it's hard to let go and let them do that. But
Mhm.
we as coaches can say, this is your decision. This is
Yeah.
your responsibility. And
Yeah.
responsibility is a beautiful, freeing thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're able to do this. You're able to make this yours.
Yeah.
And yeah,
That's such a great way of putting it. And it really does come down to sending the message that ultimately you are the one in charge of what you decide to do and what you decide not to do in anything.
right.
And that's what these conversations are all about. And I sense that you and I could probably talk for hours on
Yes.
all of these topics.
Absolutely.
And but we've touched on some really important things here, and I am so glad that you came on and shared your story and that your strategies that you used with the girls. And of course, I'm going to put the links to everything so people can know how to find you and reach you in the show notes and everything. But if someone is hearing this and thinking, I really would like to work with her, tell me how you work with people and just give a little overview of that, what that might look like.
Okay. I work with teenage and college girls, so ages like 13 to 23. And I offer coaching packages where we have one on one sessions via Zoom. And then I also have communications with the girls between sessions. And the three pillars of my business are self compassion, self reliance, and self confidence. So those are the three pillars we work on. And we begin with self compassion because that's the place, where we all have to come to terms with we are who we are and we're going to love who we are and we're going to accept. And then self-reliance is the next step because I love when girls realize they have their own backs.
Mhm.
And that's part of my passion of doing this, because like I said, it took me 40 some years to figure it out. So I'm like, I want you to learn in your teens, because can you
Right.
imagine knowing that at their age? It's so exciting.
Mhm.
And then self-confidence is the third pillar, and that's something we'll work on, I think, until we die. But
Yep.
it's important to talk about it. But yes, so I offer those packages. And I also have some group coaching with college girls, and that's fun. Yeah.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your tools and strategies. This has been a really great conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
I've loved it. Thank you, Jennifer.
If you liked this episode, I'd like to invite you to join Raising Happy Teens, my free online community for parents of teenagers, where every week I host Ask a Coach. You bring your parenting questions, and I provide expert advice and coaching. Click the link in the show notes to join today. I'll see you inside.